You're tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
This weekend, the Conservative Party of Canada is having a virtual convention. Normally, these are very big to-dos, policy conventions that bring in people from around the country. They vote on various resolutions, amendments to party policy, and they can become battlegrounds in a lot of cases for what the grassroots of the party thinks and what they want on certain key issues. And one area where we always see this unfold is the battle between social conservatives and pro-life members of the party, and oftentimes those who don't want those people to have a say in party policy. If you look at the convention this weekend, 34 of 196 ideas submitted by the party's riding associations will make it to the floor for debate, and none of those are on abortion, despite a very significant effort from pro-life groups and individuals. I want to talk about this with Scott Hayward, who is the co-founder of RightNow and joins me on the line. Scott, good to talk to you again. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks, Andrew. It's always great to be on your show, and thanks for the invitation.
Now, people that aren't members of the Conservative Party or a political party, or people who have never participated in this process might not know, but the party policy, what is that?
So the party policy document, is a document that is utilized by most political parties in this country, and it's more or less the official stance of that political party on a variety of issues, whether it be the environment or foreign affairs or economy, crime, things of this nature. So the Conservative Party of Canada, like you mentioned, is having their biannual, so every 2 years, their policy convention coming up later this week.
And how does it differ from the platform?
So the platform is put together by the leader, by the caucus, by party staff, as the platform going into an election campaign on specifically what a political party intends to do should they form government after the election. Most political parties will establish their platform based off of the official party policy document we just discussed, which is voted on and proposed by members of the party about once every 2 years by most political parties. So what's happening this weekend for the Conservative Party of Canada and next weekend for the Liberal Party of Canada is going to be informative for both political parties, as we likely are going into an election sometime later this spring.
So you've answered the next question I had, which was why this matters. So I'll skip ahead to the question after that, which is that why are these such battlegrounds, and how have we seen that battle manifest for social conservatives and pro-lifers specifically leading up to this convention?
So it's important that various constituents within political parties are able to express their views, their values, and want to see that reflected within both the party platform, but also the party policy document, which of course informs the platform. So within the Conservative Party of Canada, you have a variety of different types of conservatives. You have, Western Canadian conservatives who are very focused on natural resource development. You have Democrat conservatives who are focused on making sure that grassroots are heard regardless of a variety of views. You have libertarians, you have red Tories, and then you have pro-lifers and social conservatives in general. So everyone gets to get involved in this process within the Conservative Party of Canada, bring up different policy ideas that are voted on by EDA, those are Electoral District Association Board of Directors. There's one in each of the 338 ridings. And then they're submitted for the Conservative Party of Canada, at least on a thing called Ideas Lab, where each EDA is allowed 25 votes to vote amongst the various policy proposals. So this time around, like you mentioned, there were 196 policy proposals. The EDAs got to vote, and then the 34 that are being voted on and debated later this week were the 34 most popular across the country.
I should say, by the way, that Schoolhouse Rock has absolutely nothing on you and how well you can describe and clearly articulate these complex matters, which people may find uninteresting, but are actually very significant to people in the conservative movement in Canada, and I'd say in the country more broadly. So let me ask you about this, because I've seen a lot of people circulating stories about the fact that none of the pro-life amendments or resolutions made it on there. This is just because they lost in a vote. It's not because there was someone that handpicked these resolutions and said, we don't want that one on the convention floor, correct?
That's a great question, Andrew. And it's something that I've heard and seen a lot within the past week or so. That used to be the policy process within the Conservative Party of Canada. EDAs would come up with party policies, and they would go to a secretive convention committee, and that committee, which was more or less appointed, got to decide, which policies would make it to the convention breakout rooms, and then, of course, to the convention floor. Over the past number of years, within the Conservative Party of Canada, we've seen a devolution toward the grassroots within the party. So now the process is that EDAs put it on an internal website called the Ideas Lab and cast a vote. So it's much more grassroots this time around than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. This time around, we proposed 2 pro-life policies. One was to eliminate the only pro-abortion policy in the Conservative Party of Canada policy declaration. That's currently Article 70 that says a Conservative government will not support legislation to regulate abortion. And then we had a second policy proposed from the riding of Burlington within the GTA that asked that a future Conservative government would seek to introduce and vote for and support legislation that would legally restrict sex-selective and late-term abortions. In Canada, according to recent polls within the past 12 months or so, something like 84% of Canadians support legal restrictions on sex-selective abortions, and up to 70%, including 60% in Ontario and 67% in Quebec, support late-term abortion restrictions. Canada, as most of your viewers would probably know, is one of only 2 countries in the world where there's absolutely no law whatsoever on abortion. So these were the 2 policies that we put forward. They were voted on by the EDAs. Our initial, and these new rules were known months ago, by the way, Andrew. Like, they were established months ago by the Convention Committee, by the National Policy Committee and National Constitution Committee and National Councils, those 3 organs all being voted on by members of the party. And so we knew the rules going into Christmas. So we knew it was going to be tough, but we had an opportunity, and we knew kind of what the pathway was. So our goal was to get 45 EDA votes for both of those pro-life policies. And when we blew past them, I was actually shocked at how many votes we got. We got 63 for delete 70, and we got around 55 for the late-term abortion one. As a comparison, last time in Halifax for that convention in 2018, we only got about maybe 25. I don't even think we got up to 30 for the delete 71, and that one didn't make it to convention floor. So this time the bar is a little higher. And there was no dirty tricks or nasty tricks, as some other organizations say, by the political party. It was simply that pro-lifers have not yet taken their rightful place on those EDA board of directors, something that we're looking to fix within the coming weeks and months. One last thing I will say is that there was an extreme, I would describe it as extreme pro-abortion policy proposed by one of the EDAs that made the current pro-abortion policy even worse from our perspective. That one didn't do so hot on Ideas Lab. It only got about 10 EDA votes or so, but there were a couple EDA boards of directors who voted for that policy, yet their slate of delegates to the convention is 100% pro-life. So there's a big disconnect between those who sit on the EDA boards and the actual members of the party within that riding. And so we're looking for the next AGMs within the next 12 to 8 months, or pardon me, 8 to 12 months to correct that disconnect, if you will.
You mentioned something in there that I found interesting. You said there are not dirty tricks. The pro-lifers were effectively outmaneuvered. And I don't mean that in a cynical way, but just they didn't have the votes on this. Do you feel that there is an issue with pro-lifers not wanting to engage? Either they don't think it's worth it, or they're fed up with either the political process or more specifically the Conservative Party? Or do you think it is just that they are a smaller share of the party than they used to be?
I don't think we're a smaller share of the party. I think, if anything, we're actually a growing share of the party. If you look at the number of candidates who had won the nominations for the 2019 election, the number of pro-lifers who were elected for the Conservative Party of Canada amongst the new members of Parliament who were elected to the House of Commons in the last election, the last 2 leadership races.
Just on that point, I mean, the leadership factor is significant. Both Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer, demonstrably, you can see in the numbers, were pushed to victory by pro-lifers and by social conservatives. So I guess, why is that not translating to the policy process?
It's a good question. So as time goes on, more or less the actual necessary work within the political sphere in Canada for the pro-life movement has more or less been neglected, I would say, for the last 40 so years. So like since we started in 2016, just over 5 years ago, it's been our job over the last 5 years to get pro-lifers more involved in the process, because we have the numbers. It's simply that they're not involved within the process. They're not informed, and they don't quite know what to do in order to make sure that their voices are heard within the right structures of, for example, the Conservative Party of Canada, and eventually, as we grow, within other political parties as well. So, like I said, last time around, we only had about 25 or 30 EDA votes for our pro-life policies. This time, we more than doubled it, in some cases tripled. Still quite isn't enough. We know which EDAs where we need to get pro-lifers to make sure that they are properly represented on those board of directors. And we're finding that through this process, because for our organization, and I might as well just tell you now because it's already baked in, there's about 4,000 delegates that are attending this convention. And from our analysis within our database, about 1 out of every 4 of those delegates comes from our RightNow database. That's a huge, huge number. Right off the bat, we have 25% of the delegates being from RightNow. And there are other pro-life organizations that are getting delegates there. There are people within the party who are attending the convention who might not be in any of the databases or are just naturally pro-life. So I would say, like, in terms of the delegates at this convention, probably well over half right across the country are somewhere on the pro-life spectrum. So it's just a matter of we keep going forward, we keep informing pro-lifers of what they need to do. And to be frank, they're starting to step up. A lot of pro-lifers have told me, delegates, saying, what's this EDA, what's this policy committee, and how can I be a part of it, and how can my friends be a part of it? And that's really great. So the next 8 to 12 months are going to be really exciting for us in the pro-life movement as we take that next step, as we mature within the Conservative Party of Canada and take our rightful place.
Now, I know every virtual event is a bit wacky in how it's formatted, but is there going to be an opportunity for emotions from the floor at this convention, as there have been at in-person conventions in the past?
Well, since the formation of the Conservative Party of Canada, which was an amalgamation between, of course, the Canadian Alliance and the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, within the Constitution, there is no opportunity for motions from the floor. That used to be something that used to be within the Reform Party. I can't remember if it was in the Canadian Alliance or not.
Yeah, and it's big in the Ontario PC Party too, I know.
Yeah. So within the federal party, that has never been something that's been allowed. To be frank, I think it's reasonable because the process to get to convention, whether it be constitutional amendments or national council candidates or even policy proposals, is relatively grassroots within the Conservative Party of Canada. So I think it's reasonable that once you get to convention, you focus on the things that actually made it to convention. Because otherwise, you can have all kinds of motions or whatever, and it's going to take a really long time to get through everything. They have hours and hours and hours of policy debate. So, there isn't an opportunity within the Constitution of the party as it is now for any motions from the floor, so to speak.
I hear a lot of frustration from social conservatives in the Conservative Party or in Canada more broadly about where things are. They feel they don't have a voice. Aaron O'Toole, a big part of his leadership was that he personally isn't a social conservative. He's personally pro-choice, but he wants to listen to pro-life voices. Do you think there is reason for social conservatives in the conservative movement to be optimistic right now?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I know a lot of people, a lot of pro-lifers were upset over the Derek Sloan expulsion, and I think that there's legitimate questions about, $131 being donated to his leadership campaign when he was raising hundreds of thousands, if not millions, from a racist under a different name. I think that's a very spurious charge and a very spurious reason to eject a member of caucus from caucus. But that being said, Aaron O'Toole, when he spoke to our organization during the leadership race, he was very clear, like he said, on his personal stances. But he also did, offer pro-lifers a couple different things. Number one, he said free votes within the House of Commons on our issues, something that has been a long-standing tradition within the Conservative Party of Canada, and something, by the way, that the Peter MacKay campaign, leadership campaign, was not promising and then changed their minds on. Number two, it was that he would fight tooth and nail against the expansion of assisted suicide. And I think we've seen that. Aaron personally has spoken about it numerous times, specifically from a personal perspective regarding his own mother going through something similar when she was sadly dying of cancer when he was a young boy. He spoke about it in the House of Commons recently this past autumn against the expansion of assisted suicide. And when the finalized version of the bill came forward to the House last week, we saw that every single member of the Conservative caucus who was present voted against that legislation. So, under Erin's leadership, we have seen pro-lifers be able to maneuver in a couple of things. Kathy Wagenthal, she has her sex-selective abortion bill, private members bill, coming forward to the House in about a month's time. Hopefully sooner rather than later, it'll have a second reading vote in the House of Commons. And then the third thing he promised, or at least indicated that he would do within our interview during the leadership race, which is available on our website, is that he would campaign against funding of abortion overseas. Now, that has yet to come to pass because there hasn't been an election yet. So I think we have to give Erin O'Toole some time to see what he will do and not do. But on the things that he did say that he would do so far, he has been able to do it. And of course, Erin O'Toole is one of 338 members of Parliament. We have 337 ridings we have to focus on. We have a number of pro-life members of Parliament who will be running for re-election, and we have to focus to make sure that we get them re-elected. So if pro-lifers out there are kind of disappointed or disillusioned with Erin O'Toole, only the people who live in the riding of Durham can vote for or against Erin O'Toole. We have other pro-lifers that we have to make sure that they get elected to the House of Commons in this upcoming election, and that's what our goal is going to be going forward.
Co-founder of RightNow, Scott Hayward. Scott, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Andrew. Much appreciated.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.